So here's the short of a long story. Back in 2004, the voters of National City passed Prop T. Prop T put a term limit in place for the mayor's office. Each term is 4 years, and you can only serve 3 back-to-back. After that, time's up. 70% of voters said, let someone else get elected.
Like in the city of San Diego, the mayor is a strong mayor. But in National City, they're just a vote on the council.
Political scientist Carl Luna has been watching National City politics play out for decades.
The idea that term limits keep you from getting entrenched politicians. The mayor would be termed out in 2018, this next election cycle, when lo and behold,
there's a new measure out, Measure B. It puts a standard 2 term limits on all elected city officials.
You got to balance it.
Let its most vocal supporter, current Mayor Ron Morrison, tell it, Measure B would mirror what most other cities have, consistent term limits for all elected officials, not just the mayor's office.
B puts us basically in line with what other cities do, the idea of 2 consecutive terms, and for all elected positions. To this point, we haven't had term limits. We've had term limit. So it's on the mayor only and not on all of our elected officials, which includes the council members, the city clerk, and the city treasurer.
But not only does Measure B set term limits on everyone, it also hits the reset button on the term limit clock for the one guy who's already been in office 12 years and is terming out, Mayor Morrison.
Clearly it would help the current mayor, who would get an additional 8 years in office under this, where in 2004 the voter intent was to have him have no more than 12 years. This is kind of like changing the rules after the fact.
It is a deceptive measure that would repeal the 2004 law, allowing him to run for another 2 terms.
Jose Rodriguez lives in National City, he's running for city council, and he's fired up about Measure B.
I think it's hypocritical, I think it's backwards, and I think we need a change.
So in response, he's pushing Measure C. We'll let Carl Luna explain it.
So then a countermeasure was put on the ballot which says, no, we're going to keep the original limitation on the mayor from 2004, which means he's termed out in 2018, but then put term limits on the city council going forward.
That means extending term limits to other elected positions without resetting the mayor's clock.
What happens in National City is people decide to jump from one elected position to another, and they stay here for 40, 50 years. I think public service is good, but people have to change with the times. And allowing new people to come up is going to allow our city to be flexible to deal with issues in the future.
But Morrison feels experience is what National City needs, not new leadership. So after 14 years on city council and 12 years as mayor, what else does Morrison want to do?
Oh my gosh, there is tons of stuff. We're getting ready to open up the waterfront, and there's a big dispute. The groups that they back want to turn everything into parks, which is really nice, really nice. The problem is, our city, like most cities, are looking at deficits coming into the future because there's less revenue coming in because of internet sales, things along that line.
The mayor's been in office for a quarter of a century, and he hasn't accomplished, he says, what he wants to. But if you haven't done it in a quarter of a century, you're probably never going to do it.
Luna says between Measures B and C, you'll find petty politics, accusations of entrenched government, and the possibility of no one walking away the victor, while nearly 1 in 4 National City residents lives below poverty.
Often when you have competing props, though, it divides up the vote and they both fail, so you might be left with the status quo after all this.
Jade Hindman, KPBS News.